Hey everyone, welcome to HR Tech Talks. I am Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad to have you here with us today. I'm looking forward to a great conversation. As always, we get a chance to talk to these leaders and innovators across HR and talent and learning and finding out what they're doing, how they're doing it, really digging into the technologies and the tools. And one of the things that my guest and I were kind of chatting about before we started here, I don't want to preempt too much of this, but one of the things we're talking about is we're seeing in our research, and I'm seeing in these conversations I'm having with leaders like you out there listening into this, that the tools that we're using are increasingly not just this transactional, I've got that, and if someone offers it to me cheaper, I'll go get a different one. But we're seeing this as an enabler of the performance that we're able to achieve as talent leaders. This enables us to perform at this level. If you took that away, it'd be like me stepping back in time, stepping back in the resources, stepping back in the things that I can accomplish. And so it's been really interesting to dive into these conversations because we're understanding more and more about how those things fit together. And so I'm really excited for this one today. We recently held our event all around the state of hiring, what's happening, and how we can hire better, essentially. Lots of things changing and moving and adjusting in that space. And all of us know that all too well. Probably some of you are dealing with that stress, and this is your little break and relief from that. So we're going to give you some insights today into how some companies are solving for that using data, using evidence, really proving the value of what they're doing, but also highlighting where there are opportunities to improve the results that they're trying to get. So today we have the company that I see as one of the leaders in helping us understand the performance of our recruiting function, what it takes to measure candidate experience and doing that again better than pretty much everybody else, and that is Survale. So today we have Jason with us. We're going to dive into this conversation, look at some of those things, really drag out every idea we can from him on how every single one of you can get better at the results that you're trying to achieve from a talent acquisition perspective. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and bring Jason into the conversation. Welcome, sir. Glad to have you.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. Super excited to be here today. Happy Monday, everybody.
Awesome. Before we dive into the stuff, as always, I'd love for you to take a second and let the audience and I know a little more about who you are and what you do, sir.
Sure. So my name is Jason Moreau, as Ben said, and I'm the co-founder, CEO of Survale. I've been in the HR technology space since the late 90s. So ever since kind of the internet kind of came over to life, I've been in HR technology. But specifically with Survale, what we're doing is we're a feedback platform. So we integrate into your systems, things like your Workday applicant tracking system or whatever ATS or HRMS platform you're using. And we help automate gathering feedback at certain highlights and real big stages in your talent acquisition process and your entire kind of hello to hire and hire to retire kind of circle of a journey of a candidate and employee.
Okay, awesome. And so today we're going to talk about some of those things. And people are probably thinking like, oh yeah, feedback platforms, but then this is just for candidates, right? And it allows you to interact with them and engage with them and understand them in a way that we often try to understand our employees inside. And so that's what really intrigues me about this is it cuts across those barriers, those boundaries that we don't all often get a chance to tap into that audience and understand them. We get little bits and pieces anecdotally when they come in or when we interview or we talk to them, but to understand and get this picture across the full set of candidates that we're engaging with as a company, I think that's a really powerful set of data, right?
Yeah, it really is. And we do beachhead and, focus on the candidate experience of organizations and an enterprise. And it's so interesting, Ben, that, the whole candidate experience has really become highlighted in the last couple of years. Previous to this, the analogy would be customer feedback. Customers were all too quick to go and share their negative experiences with the world, on whatever social media platform it was. And that is also true now with candidate experiences and employee experiences that, we have these social media sites giving you transparency as you go and research for your next career move. Well, that's where all this negative feedback ends up. As positive too, but, candidates are all too quick to go and share those negative experiences throughout that hiring process, and there's a lot of them.
Yes, for sure. Well, I was going to encourage everybody, by the way. I usually do this at the beginning of the episode, and I just skipped over it today. I'm so pumped to dive into this. But for those of you out there listening, if you've got a question for Jason as we're going through the episode today, please chime in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on that. If you have a good question that you want him to answer, we've got him here. I'll take all easy questions. I'll pass the hard ones his way, let him try to tackle those. But we've got the benefit of having him here as an expert. He works with companies on this every single day. And so this is his sweet spot. So if you've got a question about candidate experience, what you can do to measure better, how to get better results in terms of process improvement or where to focus, we'll talk about those things. But if you got a specific question, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We'll engage and get some insight from Jason as we're going through this. So Jason, one of the things I want to ask you about is I get the question often, like, what should we be measuring when it comes to hiring? Because as you well know, there's this big swath of things we could be focusing on from the very earliest parts, or even before someone engaged with us, what a brand looks like, all the way through to the throughputs on offers and everything else. There's a thousand things we could say, okay, we're going to measure that. Right. How do we prioritize? How do we know what the thing is that we should be looking at and evaluating on a regular basis?
Well, that's a great question. And, we have best practices. When we say hello to hire, it's the hello is your career site. You want to understand, how are people navigating and utilizing and searching on our career site? Do they want to see more diversity and inclusion? And the only way you know that is by asking them on the career site. Again, at that point, you're asking for some anonymous feedback, doing some research. Maybe you're listing some open-ended text comments. You're kind of intercepting some of those negative reviews by listening, right? So as long as you're addressing, you can hopefully take some of those negative reviews off of those social media sites and address them right here. But once they enter inside that kind of hiring talent acquisition funnel, you definitely want to start understanding, how is our talent acquisition team performing on those phone screens and follow-ups and assessment technology. We're starting to go through understanding, how are our people performing? How's our technology? Major points. And at each juncture and stage and step, all three could be out of line, out of whack, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have our hiring managers. That seems to be where the biggest issue is. And often when companies come to us to say, my gut feeling tells me there's something happening with our hiring managers in these interviews. We have still 40 seats empty over here, and we're bringing them great talent. We don't know what's happening, but our gut tells us there's something wrong there. So, you want to definitely understand what an interview, post-interview looks like from the hiring manager candidate perspective. And then beyond that, you want to start understanding, are you experiencing declined offers from your candidates? And, those are really important things to look at, as well as offers being accepted. What was the deciding factor? Let's replicate these positive things. So it's not just all about finding negative and undercover, discovering things that are holding us back, but it's also about, let's replicate the things that we're doing well too. So
that's an interesting point there, because one of the things when I'm speaking lately about hiring, one of the stories I tell is about a leader that I worked with years ago. I said, he was doing something different than everybody else. And I could see it in the data, but I had no idea what it was. So I went and spent some time with him and started doing a little bit of fact finding to figure out what this thing was. And I saw some of the behavior, some of the words, some of the ways he just interacted with people and paid attention to them in the interview process in the early days once they started with us, and started using that as kind of a benchmark for everybody else to say, hey, if you're not doing a couple of these things, I don't want you to be him, but this is the specific behavior that he's doing that's getting the results. And let's start looking at how to incorporate that into other leaders in the business. And I love that, because I jump to the troubleshooting, right? I love to find a problem and tease it out and figure the problem is, but I love the side of this you're talking about, where you can say, hey, something's really working. And if you don't know what that is, you might have that gut feeling, but let's try to pinpoint that with actual data so we can all replicate that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's we're pinpointing things, right? We're not just trying to go with gut feelings. We're gathering third-party feedback. We're asking experiential questions. We're tying it to operational fields from our systems, so we can actually go and pinpoint things now. And it removes the question marks. And it's no, we need to go and train these 5 managers on how to interview and be prepared and how to communicate back. Because what's happening right now, Ben, is there's a massive struggle to bring in talent into these organizations, right? And all too often, what organizations do is they'll look at, throwing things that help you improve and move your company forward. Things like, well, I should go buy a new career site. I'm going to go spend $500,000 on revamping our career site. I'm going to go spend more money on job advertising. I'm going to go hire more people. What they fail to do, and very often those things don't move the needle significantly. You still have empty seats in your organization. What they fail to do is look at things that are holding them back. Like, where in our technology, people, and process, where are things holding us back? It could be your career site. So, okay, we'll fix that. But now it could be our technology on our assessment technology, or it could be as simple as our manager now is not performing correctly, and not being prepared, not giving feedback, not actionable next steps. And all this circles back to your employer brand, and it ends up on social media. So that's kind of where all these stemming problems come from.
If I had a whiteboard with me right now, I would draw this out, because you and I actually talked about this before we started recording. I love the idea of figuring out problems operationally and trying to analyze and figure out where those roadblocks, where those bottlenecks might be. And if you imagine, for those of you out there, your hiring funnels, this long journey, you might say, hey, we know that something's happening right here at this point, but once you solve that bottleneck, we'll find somewhere else, right? You'll find out where the next most common place is and the next most pressing area to focus is. And that's what's really intriguing to me about this is it's not just a list of here's all the bad things.
Right.
Here's all the things that are wrong. Here's where you're screwing up.
Yeah.
But prioritize this. Do this thing to increase the throughput of your candidates. Do this thing to increase how happy they are once they finish this, because we're able to respond to them more quickly. We make this little tweak in how we communicate to them, or change the thing over here so that hiring managers, right, they're never going to be perfect, but at least they all send this template response out after an interview to thank the person and appreciate their time, whatever else. Like, we'll find those little things that we can do, but until you have this stuff in front of you, you can be guessing all day long.
Right.
Guess at this problem. Hopefully that solves it. Again, and you even said spending a ton of money in some cases trying to solve a problem that might not even be the core problem.
Right. You may have now you've kind of eased the process to apply, but now you've squeezed the next problem too. I'll give you a good example. And there are career site problems out there. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen people leaving an application process, and as they go to blow out of that page, we'll ask them, like, why are you leaving? And they'll tell us most often, I'll come back later because this is too long. That's a simple action item, right? You can take that. And then we've also seen in the talent acquisition process, not to pick on recruiters, but we had this one organization where the moment they went live and automated feedback for post phone screens from the recruiters, there was one out of the 16 recruiters that 100% of the feedback that came back from candidates was saying, he never called, he never emailed. There was 100%. So what they discovered was this recruiter was just pushing people through the workflow and not actually doing their job. So what a great discovery to be able to like realign or replace in whatever case here. Then you look at the hiring managers, and there's a whole set of issues when it comes to the hiring manager. So at each particular step and stage in your funnel, there's people, process, and technology. And it could be all three have problems, maybe none of them have problems, maybe only one of them have problems. But instead of throwing a dart trying to understand where it is, when you go and analyze and look at feedback at each particular juncture continuously, you'll be able to discover that and pinpoint it and focus on where you should be focusing.
I want to ask you something, because we're talking a lot about how this fits in our little bubble, right, of TA and the things that we see and the boundaries around us. But some of these things that illuminate that some of the problems that are illuminated might require us to take that data to someone else, or to find another stakeholder, or to have another conversation outside of our little bubble. What recommendations do you have for people on that? Or how should you? I don't even know what the question I should be asking is, right? Honestly, we have this data. Whom should we be talking to? Where should we be taking it? How should we be sharing it? Should we just be saying, hey, by the way, like most, I'll blame this on me because I've done this. Most HR leaders like, hey, our engagement score is X, with no other context. Right. I don't think that's the right answer, to share that with your other leaders and say, hey, our candidate experience score, right, or how people feel is X.
Right.
What else should you be sharing with those other leaders outside of your bubble, whether just to understand some of those things? I'm curious.
Right. So The candidate net promoter score is kind of the basic one, right? Like you want to understand your aggregate net promoter score, and then you want to get granular by division, by region, by department. You can get all the way very granular so that each individual recruiter could have their own candidate net promoter score, which really then ties to performance, which is really where this product and this kind of feedback, third party feedback is going. It's no longer just internal, how am I performing? It's based on candidates' feedback, and you can have monthly scores on your candidate net promoter score for your recruiters, so that when it comes time for a quarterly annual review, you have something to look back at. So there's those kinds of scores, as well as you can apply that to hiring managers and their interview performances. You can do month over month, quarter over quarter. So you're really starting to highlight, and this data is being shared out with the C levels. So with Survale, we provide obviously our proprietary analytics so that the people experience, the candidate experience people can come in here, analyze in real time. But we also have exports, automated exports to go into Power BIs and so forth to analyze from all systems and encompass it there. So I know our C levels of our clients, they're going into the meetings with the CHROs, and they're being able to pull up performance data. Here's our candidate net promoter score in APAC, and here it is in the North America. They're out of line. Here's why. And so they're not just saying they're out of line, but they're actually going, here's why, because we're actually able to pinpoint some actionable items. So we can dive in and say, all right, here's what we need to do. We need to either go upgrade this, hire more here, or retrain some people. So there's real actionable data to realign. And these realignments happen quickly. Like we've seen one of our clients, here to give another example, one of our clients operated in 4 different regions: APAC, North America, India, and I can't remember, EMEA. And the India region was significantly dragged, meaning the talent pipeline was poor. They were attracting poor to weak talent. And that talent, when they did get to the hiring phase, they were declining the offers. It was just a bit of a disaster. And then all the other regions were performing really well. So when we ran the analytics, really pinpointed, well, it's to do with your interviews, and the interviews are related with your managers. And here's the feedback. These candidates are saying that your managers that are interviewing are completely unprepared. They don't understand the role. They don't understand the organization. Who wants to work there? I don't even know what I'm signing up for. They realigned. They trained those managers on how to interview and provide feedback and communicate. And within 3 months, India surpassed one of the other regions in performance, and they started attracting talent, like the quality talent that they want. So,
I love that story. And not just because it's a great success story, everybody loves a comeback, but I love that because in this conversation overall, we've been talking about, hey, we can find out if one of us as a recruiter or one of us as a hiring leader is not doing our job properly, or we need some training, or we need some help, or we're too strapped, we need additional support on our team. You can pinpoint those things. But I love this too, because we're saying, hey, by the way, we're not the only piece of this equation. There's other variables here, and that includes our hiring managers. They're a big chunk of this. And to be able to say, hey, we've realized in this that it doesn't matter how many candidates we push through, what the quality is, whatever else, because if that part of the process is broken, it doesn't matter. We can put as many great people in front of them as we want to, and it still won't solve the end result of getting the right people in the seats. And so I love that, because it kind of, in my mind, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit with the hiring managers, because something that feels like there's this butting of heads, if you will, and that helps us hold each other accountable, not just hold it over their head, but hold each other accountable for getting the right impact.
Right. So Ben, you also asked, what other kind of items or KPIs are being shared out? Other KPIs. So not just candidate promoter scores and so forth, but hiring manager interview performance, aggregate level, granular, employer brand metrics. So as we're surveying through all the different stages and steps, we can simply ask a question. What's your perception of us as an employer now that you've phone screened, or now that you've interviewed? That tells you a lot about your brand. As well as we're doing a lot of internal satisfaction. So exactly what you just addressed there is, there's a lot of friction between talent acquisition and managers, is trying to understand where that friction is by surveying and gathering feedback from both sides. Organizations just aren't asking the hiring managers how is that? Did you see enough quantity, quality, diversity in this requisition? But they're asking the recruiters, how responsive was the manager? Were they communicating? Were they timely in providing follow-up feedback? So you really start to understand how your managers and talent acquisition teams are working effectively together. So those are kind of the high level KPIs that are being shared out. And then it gets very granular into performance of each individual person.
I love that. So for the companies that you're working with that are using this,
Yeah.
do they have someone already on staff that's on the recruiting team, or is the VP of talent or whoever else that is already a little bit of an analytics nerd, a little bit of data nerd? Are they
It's a
bringing
bit
in
of
someone else
both.
to help manage that? Do they have someone else in
Yeah.
the business that's already got that expertise and they're saying, "Hey, come spend some time with us in
Right.
recruiting and help us out"? Like, what does that look like?
It's a mixture of everything right now.
Okay.
So organizations are recognizing we need to be doing this.
Hmm.
We don't necessarily have a people experience or a candidate experience person, and in many cases they do. And we've had one client where they have 7 people on the candidate experience team.
Wow.
7, yeah, and they're only 3,500 employees. So that's how focused they are. And then in many cases, it's the director of talent acquisition, VP of talent, global talent that are driving these forces. So it's all hands kind of on deck in some sense right now. It's kind of a mixture of everywhere, but we're definitely seeing a trend of people starting to carve out the role for people in candidate experience.
That's really intriguing.
Mhm.
That's one of the things I wrote about in my book years ago is that I expect to see more people. I've actually seen it in the learning side where people are dedicated to just doing the experience piece. That's 100% what they do, is trying to create an experience around people that it drives the right action or behavior or feeling.
Yeah,
And so people have been getting into that and getting deeper into it on the recruiting side. And that's been so much fun to see that. But the analytics piece is the one I've been curious about, because a lot of the people I talk to that get into and love recruiting, it's like, I love talking to people. I love finding a connection with them and building this relationship. And they
hmm,
don't say, I love, all the numbers and all the data and all the metrics. And like, no, there are very few of them that I talk to that have that kind of bent, that kind of leaning to
right,
them. But the ones that do have that, it seems, like a paradox, but they actually can help create better and more human experiences because they actually understand what is driving people, what is
right,
upsetting someone in this process. We can take that away so that it feels more pleasant or more consistent or more frictionless or whatever adjective we want to throw in there. So
right,
I just
right.
love those kind of interplays there.
Yeah, yeah, it's super exciting. Um, and I just find it really exciting that 3 years ago you heard the buzzword candidate experience, and every vendor threw it into their product offering, candidate experience, and so every vendor's view of what candidate experience meant was coming from their perspective and their technology. When
Mhm.
in reality, a candidate experience is every interaction you have as an organization with a candidate, whether it's people, process, technology. Every interaction you have with that candidate should be measured, and collectively that aggregate number is your overall candidate net promoter score. So it's not just your career site experience. It's not just a phone screen. It's not just how I onboarded, or it's collectively the holistic picture is how you're performing.
I think I used this phrase with you earlier, but it feels like the heyday of candidate experience lately, just because
Mhm.
I can't go anywhere without seeing here's company's logo, and then right under that we're hiring, and or here's how
Right,
to text to apply, or here's our link to our career site, or whatever it is. Like everybody's so pressed for that right now that is right behind who we are as a company. Is we're also a company that needs people. And
right,
so this is the biggest time to prioritize this and focus on this. Don't care if you're massive enterprise company or a company with 3,500 employees, as you mentioned a minute ago, or a company with 35 employees. How you
right.
treat people has always mattered, but it matters now more than ever, I would say.
Yeah, and Ben, I'm sure you see this a lot in talking to your clients that organizations are doing mass hiring right now. So
Mhm.
they're hiring these candidates, and then what happens is there's like usually a little bit of a gray period where the new hire doesn't start for a week or two, and they're not showing up, and
Mhm.
there's a big problem here, and nobody really knows why, because how could you unless you ask. And so we've actually have a little product now that helps you like try to keep that new hire engaged for those 2 weeks, like personalizing. Do you know where you're showing up on Monday? Do you know who you're meeting? Do you know like where to park? Like reduce those anxiety levels so that they want to join you. So that's right now a really big experience. It's a candidate experience, a new hire experience. Like I want to feel like I'm welcomed. I want to reduce my anxiety. I'm showing up on Monday. There's all those factors, and you won't know the true factor unless you're asking.
Yes. Take nothing for granted, because that's
Right.
something we've taken for granted for a long time. It's once they've accepted an offer, they're going to show up, and you can't take that for granted anymore.
Right. Well, think about the cost that you just lost, like the expense there, like
Yes.
for everything from attraction, sourcing to the people that you've put into place to screen and background check and assessment, and the time you put in there to the offer and getting approvals. Like the cost is enormous, and to
Yes.
not have them show up is a big problem.
Yeah. Goodness. We actually, one of the things in some of our new data on the great reprioritization, we asked the question: if you accepted a job, how long would you be looking at other jobs or be open to other conversations and things like that? And it was really intriguing to see, about a third of people said, once I get the offer and accept it, I'm done. The other
Okay.
2/3 had a variety from, I keep my eyes open for a few weeks, to like, I would never stop if it's the right offer. I'm always going to kind of keep my options open. And that was really intriguing to me to see that kind of, I don't know if flexibility is the right word there. That kind of attention put on
Openness.
that. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
that's
Well,
wild.
that's a bit scary.
So if someone wants to learn more about Survale, wants to follow the company, connect there,
Yeah.
obviously on the event here on LinkedIn, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, then you can click through and follow Survale there on their through their LinkedIn page. But if there's another way for them to connect with the company or learn more, what's the best way to do that?
Well, our company page is survale.com. Also, you can just email me and I can route it just jason@survale.com. So those are really the two easiest ways to come to our career or our corporate website, or email us.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I know the audience has been kind of tuned in, everybody saying hello and chiming in from wherever they are,
That's great.
mostly in the US, but also around the world a little bit today. So it's been so much fun. Jason, I appreciate your time, your expertise, your passion for helping companies to do this better. Appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's been a wonderful morning, and everyone have a great week.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. To everybody else out there, I appreciate you, Aaron, Giselle, Dawn, and I can't see mystery user from Morocco. Hello from overseas. Great to have all of you here today with us, and thank you so much for hanging out. Please take some of the ideas that you heard today, put them into practice. Go out there, dig out some data on your candidate experience, try to understand what's working out there, what's not working out there, and how you can create some better results, better impacts, better opportunities to connect with your people and bring in the right people into your organization. Thank you all for hanging out with us. I appreciate you. I'm Ben Eubank, your host for HR Tech Talks, and we will catch you again next week.